Hello everyone, hope you are well. I wanted to continue on my legend series, and I had decided, even after my last legend, that it would be Glenn McGrath of Australia, one of the greatest fast bowlers of all time, without any doubt. And it was a big coincidence that I saw Mitchell Stark bowl Abhishek with a beauty. That pitched on leg stump and took his off stump. Even though Mitchell Stark is a left armer, it reminded me of Glenn McGrath's delivery to Brian Lara in 1999 at Manchester in the World Cup, where he bowled a pitch of a ball where it pitched leg stump and hit Lara's off stump. Glenn McGrath's full name is Glenn Donald McGrath, which is not a bad name to have Donald and McGrath together. I'm talking about Alan Donald. And he was born February 9th, 1970 in New South Wales. New South Wales have produced most of the big players from Australia, just like Barbados in West Indies. And his nickname was Pigeon. And without any doubt, he's one of the greatest fast bowlers of all time, and definitely known as probably the most accurate bowler of all time. His line and length was impeccable, and he always got extra bounce because of his big height, and he always troubled batsmen from all around the world, all teams. And he was the main reason. Together with Shane Warne, Glenn McGrath was the main reason why Australia was such a dominant force from mid 90s to the late 2000s. That Australia were kind of unbeatable. And in all, he did play for New South Wales and Worcestershire and Middlesex, just one season each. And in all, he played 124 test matches for Australia, and he took 563 wickets at a very good average of 21.64. And he had 29 5-wicket hauls and 3 10-wicket hauls. And his best figures was 8 for 24. And in one-day matches, he took he played 250 matches, and he took 381 wickets, and he had 7 5-wicket hauls in one days as well. And his best figures was 7 for 15. And in first-class cricket, he took 835 wickets, and he had 42 5-wicket hauls and 7 10-wicket hauls. So that is his statistics. And McGrath was, without any doubt, someone who troubled big batsmen a lot. He had big battles with Brian Lara, Sachin Tendulkar. And like I mentioned in Michael Atherton's video, he dismissed Michael Atherton 19 times, which is the highest for any bowler against any batsman. He also dismissed Tendulkar 13 times in Test and One Day together, and also dismissed Brian Lara 15 times. And he has a world record for the highest number of wickets taken in World Cups. He has 71 wickets in World Cup, which is a world record. And he was well known for his line and length, obviously. And he had this habit of targeting the best batsmen from the opposition teams. And he used to do it like publicly. And there's a very famous thing that he once did when he got his 300th wicket. When he was approaching his 300th wicket before the series started against West Indies, he already said in an interview that he would take Sherwin Campbell's wicket as his 299th wicket, and that he would take Brian Lara on the first ball, which would become his 300th wicket. And he exactly did that. He took Sherwin Campbell 299 wickets and Brian Lara for a golden duck, and Brian Lara was his 300th wicket. An excellent batsman to have as your 300th wicket. And he actually took Jimmy Adams, the captain, in the next ball as well, and he completed a memorable hat-trick that time. That was one of the few times, I'm sure the only time, when a bowler has taken his 300th wicket and a hat-trick after the next ball. And in 1999, I was talking about that match where he bowled Brian Lara with that beauty. In that match at Old Trafford, Manchester, he took 5 for just 14 runs. 5 wickets for just 14 runs, and West Indies were bowled out for just 110 runs as well. He had so many great bowling figures against all batsmen. And he, by the way, is MRF Pace Foundation director. He was appointed in 2012, and he replaced the great Dennis Lilly, who was in charge of the MRF Pace Foundation since it started in 1987. And Glenn McGrath was also an amazing outfield fielder. He had one of the best accurate, fastest throws from the outfield, and he was very well known for that. And he also had this real habit, people will remember, he used to have this habit of shaking his head a lot of times when he used to bowl a rare bad ball. I mean, he hardly used to bowl any bad balls, but when he bowled a ball on the legs and got hit for a four, or maybe over pitch a ball and get driven for a four, he would just shake his head a few times. I mean, it was like he couldn't believe that he bowled a bad ball. I mean, he was like a Curtly Ambrose in that way. Curtly Ambrose also never expected to bowl a bad ball, and I was really unhappy when he bowled a bad ball. And Glenn McGrath, he is batting. He was never a good batsman at all, and they were used to have a big fun at the Australian team meetings about that. But Steve-O used to motivate him to bat well, and he actually in 2004 it was the Australian team. I mean Langer, Hayden, Gilchrist. I mean they were all laughing because they couldn't believe it. Glenn McGrath and Jason Gillespie put on a 114-run partnership against England in 2004, and Glenn McGrath actually scored 61 runs, which was his best Test score, and he was very proud about that. He used to take his batting seriously, even though he was not good in batting. And there's a lot of things to say about Glenn McGrath. I mean, he also has a bigger cancer foundation. I mean, after his wife Jane McGrath died out of cancer, and there is a pink day at the Sydney Test. And normally, I think it's the third day on the Sydney New Year Test that it's like a pink day, and everyone turns out in their pink outfits as well. And Glenn McGrath, I mean, he together with Shane Warne really was a dominant force for Australia. And Glenn McGrath was very tall, like I said in the beginning. He was 6 foot 6 inches, and that helped him to get a lot of extra bounce. I mean, even from good length, his balls used to kick up. I mean, just like Curtly Ambrose as well, who was very tall, and that used to make a batsman really uncomfortable. And he used to move the ball a lot off the seam, like off cutters and leg cutters. He wasn't someone who really used to swing the ball because he hardly ever pitched the ball up much, like Curtly Ambrose as well. And he always used to kind of bowl the back of the length. He never used to like pitching the ball up much and getting driven. But he used to obviously bowl the Yorkers well when he did. And eventually, towards the end of his career or towards the latter part of his career, he used to swing the ball a bit. But seam movement was his main weapon, and his extra bounce as well. I mean, and he was amazingly impeccable with his line and length. I mean, he hardly ever used to give anything away. I mean, and I've watched a lot of matches that South Africa played against Australia as well. I mean, when Glenn McGrath comes, I mean, you don't get an inch. I mean, you're always under pressure. I mean, and he was a captain's dream, just like Shane Warne. I mean, Glenn McGrath, if you bring him back for any spell, you almost kind of guaranteed of a wicket. I mean, 99 out of 100 times, I mean, Glenn McGrath would take a wicket in a spell. So he was a banker, a bowler for a captain, and Mark Taylor obviously in the mid-90s, and Steve-O, and then Ricky Ponting had a great time having Glenn McGrath in the team because he was such a reliable bowler. I mean, and his economy rate, obviously, without don't even have to mention it, his economy rate was one of the best in one-day cricket as well. I mean, he hardly ever used to go for more than 35 runs in a one-day match. Normally 20s, early 30s. Just like I said about Curtly Ambrose, I think I've seen Glenn McGrath go over 50, more than Ambrose. I think once I saw him go over 60. There was just one match against Pakistan when Moin Khan went after him towards the end, but he hardly ever used to go for much runs. So Glenn McGrath, I mean, obviously, someone who did so many things for Australia, and I mean, he was, I mean, an absolute legend. I mean, and one thing about Glenn McGrath is, I mean, some bowlers do have trouble, or batsmen have trouble against a certain opposition and a certain country, but Glenn McGrath consistently performed against all teams, all test playing nations, and even one day matches. In test and one day matches, he always had success against every team, against most batsmen as well. There's no batsman who wasn't troubled by Glenn McGrath in cricket. So he was just amazing. And he retired in 2006. I mean, after that test series where Australia whitewashed England 5-0, and there was a big retirements. Glenn McGrath, Shane Warne, Justin Langer, Matthew Hayden, all four of them retired at the same time, and there was a lot of trouble given to Ricky Ponting within the new captain. But thankfully, Australia did manage well after that as well. I mean, those are huge retirements coming at the same time. I mean, any other team in the world probably would have really had a huge hiccup. Now that Australia didn't have, but a lot of teams would have found it very difficult to recover. I mean, there are a lot of big teams in the world who have had big retirements, like Sri Lanka after Sangakkara Jayawardene. I mean, they have never really been the same after that. But Australia obviously are a powerhouse in cricket, and the domestic cricket is also very big. So they did manage well after Glenn McGrath and Hayden, Matthew Langer, Justin Langer, Shane Warne's retirement. So those are the things that I have to say about Glenn McGrath, someone who was amazing, very tall bowler, and who used to get extra bounce from good length, and who used to move the ball a lot, and who used to bowl an amazing line and length, and who never used to give any loose balls, and always put batsmen under pressure, and who was the main reason why Australia dominated cricket in the mid 90s and late 2000s. And he was a very popular figure in the Australian dressing room as well. I mean, and another thing about Glenn McGrath, he was never short of giving a word to the batsman. He used to kind of sledge the batsman. I mean, he used to kind of try to irritate the batsman a lot and talk to them. And I've even seen a match in a one-day match where he was bowling bouncers at Sachin Tendulkar, and Sachin Tendulkar was just ducking it and leaving it. And Glenn McGrath was coming next to Shane Warne and like showing with his hands that he should hook, and Tendulkar actually then showed him that the next ball, if you pitch short, I'm going to hit it out of the ground, and Tendulkar pointed to the mid wicket, and there was a big laugh between Gilchrist and Marco at the end of the over. That was probably one of the only few times I've ever seen Tendulkar talk back to a batsman like that. But Glenn McGrath, I mean, was always a problem for every batsman, and he used to really kind of chirp and irritate batsmen. But that was a part of his plan. I mean, being an Australian, but I mean, obviously, he was as good as anyone has ever been. I mean, he was, and he was a very proud bowler as well, who took a lot of pride in his bowling, and he never liked. Going for runs and even giving one boundary. I mean, he was always very miserly with his bowling, and he always kept pressure on the batsman. I mean, all the time, and in Test as well. Every session, I mean, when Glenn McGrath came to bowl, I mean, he was always putting pressure. I mean, not giving runs away, and any batsman, I mean, without getting runs, I mean, they get pressurized, and then he would always bowl a magic ball, unplayable ball that you would nick off to the slips or get an LBW because of his immaculate line and length. So that is my video on Glenn McGrath, definitely one of the greatest fast bowlers of all time. And by the way, I mean, he was a medium fast, fast medium. I mean, not he was in the express pace. But anyway, that is my video on Glenn McGrath, and a lot of great memories of Glenn McGrath as well. Thank you everyone for joining. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'm sure a lot of people definitely did love Glenn McGrath. Thank you everyone. Please take care. God bless you.